Hey guys, this is Mrs. Weisenborn and Mrs. Mays in the house. Today we're doing 3.8 notes. It's all about parallel lines and perpendicular lines and their slopes. So that's why we had to review slope in section 3.7. So the main thing is that you need to know parallel lines have the same slope. If you look at the lines, we've got y equals 3x plus 8 and y equals 3x minus 4. So the slopes are both 3. Bless you, Mrs. Mays. So the slope is in y equals mx plus b. It's the m part, so it's the part in front of the x. Make sure that y is by itself. And then with perpendicular lines, they are opposite reciprocals. So if one's positive, the other's negative. And reciprocal means basically they're flipped. So you've got 1/3 and 3, which is technically 3 over 1 if you need to write it that way. So negative 1/3, 3 over 1. One's positive, one's negative. So that's the main idea for today. We're just going to show you a bunch of different types of problems that go along with this idea. Okay, so here's where your notes start. Just follow along. Pause the video at any time if you were going too fast. Okay, so the slope of a line, this is a review. You can do a slope formula, which is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. That's also the same thing as y1 minus y2 over x1 minus x2. Just be consistent. So if we want to find the slope of the line given 2 points, all we need to do is plug those into slope formula. So I would label those x, y, x, y. Okay, so we're going to plug in those into our formula. So we're going to do y2, which is 5, minus negative 3. Watch out here, we've got 2 negatives. And then we've got 4 minus 2. 5 minus negative 3 is 8. And 4 minus 2 is 2, which is 4. So the slope of a line that would be parallel to that would also just be 4. And then perpendicular would be flipped, so 1 over 4, and then opposite signs. So the original one was positive, so this is going to be negative. Alright, so let's look at a graph of some lines and find their slopes. So to find the slope of line M, we can just simply count. So how much is going down and then over. So find a point where it's going through the grid and see how much it's going down and then over. So it's going down 1 and over 1, 2, 3. So the slope here is negative 1/3. Now let's find the slope of line N. So it's going up 1, 2, 3 and over 1. So that's 3 over 1. Well, if you look at the slopes, they are flipped and opposite. So that means that these lines are perpendicular. So where they intersect forms a 90-degree angle. Okay, so two non-vertical lines have the same slope if and only if they are parallel. So the whole idea today is that parallel lines have the same slope and that perpendicular are flipped and opposite. This first question is very similar to the question that you will see on your test, and you'll probably see it on your SOL. We have to determine whether the lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. Well, all I have are some points here. Well, given points, we can find the slope. So let's do that. Let's find the slope of AB, and then find the slope of line CD. Once we do that, we can compare them. Remember that you need to have the slope formula memorized. So we're going to go ahead and find the slope of line AB using our formula. If you want, you can pause the video and try it on your own, or you can follow along with us. Okay, so we're going to do 7 minus -5 and 4 minus -2. Watch out for those double negatives. It turns into a positive. So we're going to have 7 plus 5, which is 12, and 4 plus 2, which is 6. And always simplify. 12 divided by 6 is 2. And you can write that as 2 over 1. Okay, now we need to find the slope of line CD. Label your points, write your formula out, and then just plug in what you know. -2 minus 2 and 8 minus 0, so it's going to be -4 over 8, which reduces to -1/2. If you're not sure how to reduce a fraction, you can just use your calculator, hit math, enter, enter.
Real quick, just a couple of things to look at. Going back to the parallel lines, you might want to put these arrows on there so we know that those lines are parallel. And another little thing is the symbol for parallel actually is inside the word parallel. So anytime we see parallel lines, we're not going to write it out. We're just going to do it like that, parallel lines. And do you see how these two L's look like those two L's? Just something to think about.
Okay, so now let's look at our slopes. We've got -1/2 and we've got 2 over 1. If they're parallel, they're going to be exactly the same. Are those slopes exactly the same? Not quite. Perpendicular lines are going to be flipped and opposite, and these are.
So this one is a 2 over 1. If you flip it, that's 1 over 2. This one's positive, this one's negative. So that means these lines are perpendicular. Which means when they do intersect, they form right triangles. The symbol for perpendicular is this symbol. It looks like an upside down T. So these are going to be perpendicular lines. Okay, moving on. Let's take a look at the next question and the rule.
Okay, so two non-vertical lines are perpendicular if and only if, little biconditional for us there, the product of their slopes is -1. Which makes a lot of sense, because if we have a slope that is 1/2, and then perpendicular to that would be -2 over 1, if you multiply those, 1/2 and -2 over 1, that gives you -2 over 2, which is -1. So that's why their product's going to be -1. So now we're going to do the same type of problem. We're going to determine whether these lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. I'm going to move a little quicker on this one since we already did something like this. And if you want to pause the video, go ahead and do that. So, I'm going to label my points, x, y, x, y. So y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. So that's going to turn into plus, which would be 3. 12, which is 1/4. That's our slope here, 1/4. All right. All right, so now we're going to find the slope of the second line. We've got y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1 to be 12 over 3, which is 4. So we've got 1/4 and 4. Are those exactly the same? No. Are they flipped and opposite? Well, they're flipped, but they're not opposite, so it's going to be neither. Right, Find the slope of the line between 0, 2 and 7, 3. So hopefully you have that formula memorized. And this is going a little bit quicker for you. Plug those in, find your slope. Okay, so our slope is 1/7. Let's talk about what our slope would be that's parallel to that. So parallel lines have the same slope, so it's actually going to be the exact same thing, 1/7. The slope that's perpendicular to that is going to be flipped and opposite, so it's going to be 7/1 and negative. All right, so let's look at that with the graph. Graph the line with the slope of +2 through the point 1, 2. So let's first plot that point over 1 up 2, and then we want it to have a slope of 2. So that means its rise is 2 and the run is 1. Don't forget the 1. So you can plot a couple of points. Remember, that's the same thing. Up 2 and to the right 1 is the same thing as going down 2 and to the left 1. And you can connect your line. Okay, let's say there was another point plotted on this graph, and we wanted to find a line that was parallel to that. If you want to graph another line that's parallel to this one, we know that parallel lines have the same slope. So if the slope on the first line is 2, then we need the slope on the line that's parallel to also be 2. So from that point, we could just go up 2 and over 1, or down 2 and to the left 1. This is very similar to a question that you'll see on your SOL and also on our test. And in a little bit, you'll do some more practice with this type of stuff. Now let's say we want to graph a line that's perpendicular to it. We know that perpendicular slopes are flipped and opposite. So the slope of the perpendicular line is going to be -1/2. So we're going to start from any of the points on the first line, and we'll go down 1 and to the right 2. Or you could go up 1 and to the left 2, either way. When you draw that line, it looks perpendicular. It looks like it makes a 90. So always make sure that your answer makes sense. If you're supposed to be drawing a line that's parallel to it, make sure they look parallel. If you're drawing a line that looks perpendicular, make sure it looks perpendicular. Alright, so here's some practice questions. Which equation is parallel to the following? Key here is slope. It doesn't really matter what the y-intercept is unless it specifies it has to run through a certain point. So our slope in this case is -3, because it's right in front of the x. Which other equation has a slope of -3? Our slope in A is 3. Our slope in B is -1/3. And the key here is that all of them have y by itself. The slope in C is -3, and the slope in the last one is 1/3. So which one has the same slope? Hopefully you picked C. So C would be a line that's parallel to that. If we graph those, we could see that. Okay, here's a great question. Given 2 points, find the slope that is perpendicular to the given points. So the key here is that it says perpendicular this time. We don't want the same slope, we want opposite reciprocals. So the first thing we're going to have to do is find the slope. So we've got 8 minus 4 and 2 minus -1, which would be 4/3. That is our slope. We want the slope that's perpendicular to that. So we need to find the reciprocal, which is just flipping those. So 3/4. And then if the original one was positive, this one needs to be negative. And it really doesn't matter where your negative sign is. You can put it up top, below, or in the middle. Another multiple choice question, very similar, only this time it's perpendicular. So again, find the slope. If we're going to be comparing lines, we need to make sure they all are in y=4, which they are in this case. Now we need to think about what the slope's going to be that's perpendicular to it. In A, it's going to be -1/2, which is opposite but not flipped, so that's not going to be it. In B, it's 1/2, which is the exact same thing, so that would be parallel to it, not perpendicular, so that's not correct. C, the slope is 2. This time it's flipped, but it's not negative, so that's not it. So it must be D, -2, which is technically -2/1. So that's flipped and opposite. Okay, last problem in your notes, and then we'll get you guys started on your homework. So again, given 2 points, write an equation that is parallel to the given points. So first thing we need to do is find our slope. (1 minus 5 over -3 minus 0, which is -4 over -3. Make sure you simplify first when you're comparing slopes. If you have a negative over negative, that is the same as a positive over a positive. Now we want to write an equation. We're going to make it run through a certain point. So you guys pick which point you want it to go through. It really doesn't matter. Let's make it run through 0, 5, just so that it's easier. The y-intercept doesn't really matter unless it says it's running through a certain point. So we're going to make it run through 0, 5. So our slope is 4/3 because they're parallel. And now we got to plug those into y=mx plus b. So our y in this case is 5. Our m is 4/3. Our x is 0. And plus b. And then 4/3 times 0 is just going to be 0. So our b ends up being 5. Now I can plug m and b into y=mx plus b. So my final answer is y=4/3 plus 5. And if you've been using point slope form, this will work out the same way. It's up to you. Alright, we're going to go ahead and start on your homework. So what we're going to do is do a few for you in each section. If you want, you can do all the problems with us first and then go back and do the ones that are left over. Or if you want, after we do 1 and 4, you can pause the video, do the rest that are like that, and then keep moving on. So it's up to you. We're going to go ahead and get started. So again, pause the video if you need to. So the first part says find the slope of a line that's parallel and perpendicular to the given line. So the first step is always just to find the initial slope. So our slope for number 1 is 1 over -10, and the slope that's parallel to that is going to also be 1 over -10. And again, it doesn't really matter where your negative is. And then perpendicular is going to be flipped, so 10 over 1, or just 10. And since the last one was negative, this is going to be positive. Okay, so if you want, you can go ahead and try 2 and 3 on your own, or you can wait till we're done with 4. It's up to you. We're going to go ahead and do number 4. We want to find the slope of a line that's parallel to this. Well, the slope here is undefined. So any line that also has an undefined slope, so with 0 on the bottom, or any vertical line, is going to also have an undefined slope. The slope that's perpendicular to that, or parallel, is going to also be undefined. Perpendicular is going to be flipped and opposite. Let's think about this for a sec. let's draw what a perpendicular line would look like through this. It's going to be a horizontal line, and the slope here is going to be 0. Which makes a lot of sense, because the undefined slope would be something over 0. Now we have 0 over something. It doesn't really matter what that other piece is. And since 0 is not positive or negative, this is the only time where you don't have to worry about a sign. Okay, so if you want to go ahead and try the next two that are like this on your own, that's fine. Or you can wait till the end and do all these on your own. Alright, we're going to go ahead and move on to number 7. We have to figure out whether the lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. We did a couple like these in our notes. First thing is find the slope of each one. I'm going to move through these a little bit quicker since you guys have been doing a lot of slope practice. You absolutely have to do this. You have to find the slope of both lines and then compare them. If they're the same, they're parallel. If they're perpendicular, then they're going to be flipped and opposite. And sometimes there might not be a relationship. A good way to check your work is you could graph all these points and draw the lines and see what they look like. That might kind of confirm your answer. Alright, so the slope of our first line is 7 over negative 4. The slope of the second line is 4 over 7. Are they exactly the same? Hopefully you said no. Are they flipped? Yes. And do they have opposite signs? Yes. So it's perpendicular. So again, at this point, if you want to go ahead and try 8 and 9 because they're very similar to this, go for it. If you want to wait till a little bit later, that's fine. We're going to jump to number 10. We're going to figure out if these lines are parallel, perpendicular, or neither. The first thing we need to do is find the slope. In the first line, I can tell what it is right off the bat because y is by itself. So the slope here is 2/3. In the second one, I'm going to have to do some work to solve for y. So we've got negative 6x plus 4y equals 21. First thing we do is move that 6x over, so I have to add it. Then we've got 4y equals 6x plus 21. Now we need to divide everything by 4. Go ahead and reduce 6/4 if you can, which would be 3 over 2. So our slope in this line is 3/2. Okay, so let's run down through the list. Parallel, are they exactly the same? No. Are they flipped? Yes. But are the signs opposite? No. So this would be neither. They do not have a relationship. Okay, number 12, very similar to that. You need to get y by itself, find the slopes, and then compare them. First one's not too bad. All I have to do is subtract 4x from both sides, and y is now by itself. So our slope in this case is negative 4. The next one, I have to do a little bit more work. If you're familiar with point slope form, I mean, you can tell just by looking at it, but we're going to work it out just to show you that, I mean, you can do it either way. Distribute, and then you can add the 6. If you're familiar with point slope form, you can tell that it's 1/4 right off the bat. It really doesn't even matter what the y-intercept is. We're just looking at the slope. But we're going to work that out for you. And if you look, the slope is 1/4. So are they parallel? Are they exactly the same? No. Are they flipped? Yes. Are they opposites? Yes. So these are perpendicular. Okay, we're going to go ahead and move on to some questions that you would see very similar to on your SOL, your like TEI type questions. We want to graph a line so that it is parallel to the other one. The key is that the parallel lines have the same slope, so let's count the slope. We're going up 3 and to the right 1. Oh, up 4 and to the right 1. So we need to also go up 4 and to the right 1. And then just draw a line. And they should look parallel if you're trying to draw parallel lines. Okay, this is very similar, but just a little bit different because we're doing perpendicular. But we still need to find the slope of the original line. It's going up 5 and right 1, or right 4. So perpendicular lines have opposite slopes, and they are flipped. So the slope is -4/5. So from that dot, we're going to go down 4 and to the right 5. But we run out of room. So we can also go up 4 and to the left 5. Plot your point and then connect the dots. They should look perpendicular. Alright, this is the last one, and we're going to let you do this on your own, but I just wanted to mention that before you go comparing the slopes, you need to make sure that you get y by themselves. Alright guys, I hope this made sense. This is the last section in chapter 3, so if you have questions, please come see us. If you have questions, please come see us day after school. Get help, you're going to have a test very soon. Have a great day.